3 years ago, you might not have had a social media component to your selling. It's part of the marketing that everyone does these days. That job description may not talk about the fact that you want them on Instagram or on IGTV or on any of the other social media platforms, putting stuff out, promoting, boosting at times on Facebook, a whole host of things in order to sell business. You got to update this because surprises are never good for the employee. And worse than that, it's taking away from revenue producing stuff to interview someone who you're never going to hire because they don't know how to do this stuff.
Hey everybody, I'm Ken Newhouse, and I'm going to welcome you to the Get Clients Now podcast, the show where high-growth consultants and professionals come to access the newest and most effective methods and systems for online marketing, advanced sales and persuasive communication strategies, and automated marketing funnels. And if you're wondering if the Get Clients Now podcast can help you get more high-value clients, enjoy more sales, build a massive tribe, and make more money, you're absolutely going to love this show.
Newhouse's work completely blows everything else that we've ever done with Google out of the water.
I have been looking for a way to grow my presence online, and what I've viewed from Newhouse's work was something that certainly is faster than anything I've seen before.
He says he's going to do something and he does it. He does it in the time frame that he says he's going to do it in. It's exciting when you talk about the results that you're going to get, and you can believe his word because he follows it up with action.
The Newhouse is direct, he's to the point, he tells you what's on his mind, and he backs his words up. From what I know now, from working with him, he's passionate about his work, and he backs it up 100%.
What I like best is you offer something that no one else has out there, which is a pretty comprehensive approach about marketing a system.
If somebody asks me, should they use Newhouse's team? Absolutely, because you're going to get the important information that you need very, very quickly.
On the internet, on the different marketing techniques, I've never experienced anything like this.
I would definitely recommend Ken Newhouse for someone who's serious about growing their business. I think that your results based on the numbers would at least double the sales in a very short time frame.
Hey everybody, Ken Newhouse here from KenNewhouse.com, and I want to welcome you back to the Get Clients Now podcast, where the one-size-fits-all marketing model is dumb, the client-centric business model is king, and top business owners share strategies that have helped their brand gain acceptance, achieve significance, and win in the marketplace so you can build your tribe with certainty. I want to remind you that MailChimp is now supporting the Get Clients Now podcast. With MailChimp, you'll find all your marketing needs in one place. Bring your audience data, marketing channels, and insights together so you can reach your goals faster. With MailChimp, you can promote your business across email, social, landing pages, postcards, and more, all from a single platform. Today is episode number 339 of the Get Clients Now podcast, and my guest today is the big game hunter, Jeff Altman. Jeff is considered one of the leading coaches for employers who hire high 5, 6, and 7-figure employees, as well as on the flip side, one of the leading coaches for high 5, 6, and 7-figure job candidates looking to land that dream job. You know, as our audience continues to grow, and actually it's crazy how fast this is happening, but as our audience continues to grow, we're getting more questions from the members of the Get Clients Now Nation. I'm speaking specifically about our fans and subscribers. And over the last 6 to 8 months, we've had a growing number of requests where people have actually asked us to talk about the hiring process, but talk about it from the perspective of a small business owner like dentist, chiropractor, local business owner, consultants, marketing consultants, whatever, right? So on today's episode, Jeff's actually going to review several of the hiring strategies that he typically reserves for private clients, which is awesome for us. Now, everybody knows that hiring the right team member or members is, as I mentioned, mission critical to the success and profitability of your business or your brand, especially if you're about to or you're in the process of scaling your business. Here's what Gary Vaynerchuk and Eric Braun, and Eric is the chief operating officer, by the way, of WeGrow, and that's a company that's owned by WeWork. But here's what they both have to say about the importance of hiring the right type of employee for your business, the critical importance of the hiring process and getting the right person to support you so your business can grow and remain profitable.
Like, you need to find somebody who just loves Excel and loves being in their calendar and freaks out when you're a minute late. And like, you need cross your T's and dot your I's. I'm sitting with Adam and asking him about details of Mission U right now with you because I don't do that. You need to hire people that do that, because you're just hiring homies or people that look the part of you, but that's not what you need. If you're the quarterback, you need to hire offensive linemen. They look different.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, the other thing I would say is, the start of my career, I was probably very much the way that you were. I was the person who needed to do everything myself because I believed I could do it better than anybody else on my team. Then I spent 3 years at Bain, which is arguably the top kind of culture in the world for a corporate company. And what I saw there was that they spend an insane amount of time training people below them to do the job that they're doing today so they can focus on the next higher level issue. And so my biggest piece of advice to you is you should look at how you're spending your time, and it might feel really strange and really awkward, but you should actually delegate, let's say in the next 2 weeks, call it 50%, maybe all of your time.
It's 2 weeks.
Sure. Teaching the people that you are delegating to do all of your exact responsibilities, literally to the point where they can do it as well, if not better than you can, and then it will free up your time. Because at the end of the day, delegation is a matter of trust. And right now, you're not trusting these people, and that's because you haven't invested in them.
Or because they're losers.
Now, everybody who listens to the Get Clients Now podcast knows that week in and week out, you're getting access to high-level methods to get you clients, not only from me, but from the world-class guests and experts that I have on the show. And suffice it to say that while I can literally give you million-dollar methods to get you clients, if you end up hiring the wrong person, none of that's going to matter because you're going to end up losing tons and tons and tons of money, or your ability to sustain growth is going to be damaged or completely eliminated. So that's what we're going to actually talk about with Jeff on today's show. And then on our next show, which is episode 340, that's the show that's coming up on Monday, I'm going to be interviewing Dr. Mike Neal and the hiring system he's created at Build My Team. But getting back to today's episode, I wanted to actually start this mini-series off with Jeff because without question, Jeff is the most experienced, most qualified, most in-demand thought leader on the subject about how to attract, find, and hire the perfect team member for your business or your brand the first time around. Listen, anyone who's been in business for any length of time knows that bad hires are one of the largest expenses your business can encounter. And they also know that it's among the most avoidable. Everybody knows that building a better hiring system can help you reduce the cost of hiring. And certainly, without question, it can improve your bottom line and do it dramatically. And again, that is exactly why I've invited Jeff onto the show. So let's do this. Let's go ahead and run through Jeff's bio. And then once I've done that, we're going to go ahead and welcome him onto the show. Former executive recruiter Jeff Altman, the big game hunter, is a coach who helps people and organizations around workplace-related issues. Job search, hiring more effectively, managing and leading, career development, workplace-related issues, and executive coaching. Altman is a member of the Forbes Coaches Council, a group of top coaches throughout the world. He hosts the #1 show on Apple Podcasts for job search, and the title of that show is No BS Job Search Advice Radio. And by the way, I've listened to several episodes Jeff has on that podcast. It's a great show. And he's also the host of a top 10 YouTube channel in that category, which you can find at www.jobsearchtv.com. All right, let's go ahead and welcome Jeff in on the show. Hey everybody, this is Ken Newhouse, and I want to welcome you to the Get Clients Now podcast. And with me, I've got my good friend, the big game hunter. Yeah! That'd be Mr. Jeff Altman. Jeff, so on behalf of myself and the members of the Get Clients Now Nation, I want to welcome you to the show. How you doing today?
I'm feeling great, thank you. Gorgeous day where I am. I hope the same is true of you too.
It's actually mid-30s and snow, but it's starting. I looked on my iPhone this morning, and it's definitely going to be warming up. So I will say this: I live just west of St. Louis, kind of out. I won't say in the country because it's like estate homes, but it's everybody's spread out. 6 to 10 acres, but we haven't had any snow this year really to speak of. And I remember growing up that we had a lot of snow here. The winters have been cold, so I don't think it's due to global warming, but I think we just haven't had as much snow lately because it was relatively easy winter to get through this year.
As it has been for me. I'm in Western North Carolina, and the fact of the matter is we hardly ever get snow by comparison to where I lived in New York. What they consider snow that makes people run to the store to buy the ingredients for French toast, milk, bread, and eggs, it's like it would be dust.
Okay, so you're in West. Did you say Western North Carolina? Okay, so next week, I think it's on the 5th, the beautiful and talented Lisa and I are going to hop in the car. We were going to fly, but I want to drive and stop at some places along the way through Tennessee, but we're going to go to Pigeon Forge and stay up in the mountains for 2 weeks. I have been on vacation up in the mountains, and this time I will say I'm not taking my horses. Normally when I go to Tennessee or ride the Appalachian Trail, and for those of you guys who don't know, that's a trail that separates. It's like the state property line between parts of Tennessee and parts of North Carolina. So Jeff, how far away from Pigeon Forge are you? A couple hours?
It's a couple hours away. And one of the fun things about that divide that you're talking about is on my side, it's called the Blue Ridge. On the Tennessee side, it's the Smokies.
Yeah, but it is beautiful, is it not?
Gorgeous.
It's stunning. Yeah, it's stunning. So anyway, I'm going to do some hiking and things like that. Lisa's not into the horse thing like I am. I can go ride 20 or 30 miles in a day, and I'm stoked on that, or even ride my bike. But anyway, we're going to have a good time. I'm going to do a lot of fishing. I haven't been fishing in a while, and as most of you guys know, I love to fish. But anyway, let's dive into the interview. Jeff, again, thanks for doing the show. I'm really excited about the topic we're going to talk about today, because I know it's a source of great consternation for a lot of business owners. In fact, I just had Dr. Mike Neal on. I actually interviewed him before I interviewed you, but I'm going to play his show right after yours because they almost work together. Dr. Mike created a hiring system that's all digital. It's all based in the cloud, so to speak. And I created a hiring system many years ago to help myself be able to hire more qualified people. But I want to get your thoughts on it because you certainly are the pro on this. But let's do this just so people can get an idea of who you are and where you've come from and your qualifications. And, guys, I'll tell you now, as you know, I only have guests on the show that are like elite experts at what they do or very, very successful business people. And Jeff's been around the block for a couple thousand times now and been doing this a while. And I would say that he's certainly one of the leading experts in the world on this topic. So I'm very, very pleased and very thankful that he took the time out of his schedule to do it. So Jeff, if you could take a minute or two and give us a little bit of a backstory about kind of where you started in this whole process of doing what you do now. First of all, tell us what it is that you do, and then give us that backstory, and then bring us kind of up to where you are now doing what you're doing.
So my name is Jeff Altman. I'm an ex-New Yorker who now lives in Asheville, North Carolina, near the Biltmore Estate. And I now coach people and organizations in a variety of ways. And with people, often it's about job search, and it's also about hiring more effectively, managing and leading. And it's big company folks, it's small company folks. And when I talk about small business or mid-sized business, I like to work with owners. And in doing that, I always say I work with self-employed people who have a lunatic for a boss. Because frankly, most of you in one way or another, if you don't believe me, ask your wife, husband, or partner about this, you guys are nuts at times. And the mania that you have to live with to be effective has an impact in your office. It has an impact in your homes, and everyone gets used to it after a while, right? The world revolves around you. You're the sun, the moon, and the stars, and it's okay. You've earned that privilege. Now, for myself, I've worked in executive search for more than 40 years, filled more than 1,200 full-time positions, plus consulting assignments around the United States. And in doing that, I spent time understanding how my clients hired, what went into the evaluation process, how they did it well, how they did it wrong. And frankly, what I learned right off the bat was most people are amateurs about hiring. They think they know what to do, but the statistics prove out that they don't. And I say that because the statistics basically say, and there are different ones on the subject, so I'm going to give you a range of numbers here. The best numbers I see are that 40% of the time, you have buyer's remorse within 18 months of hiring someone. That's the best of them. 40% of the time, it's a failure within 18 months. The worst statistic I see is a little over 60%. So people think they know what they're doing. But how many times have you grumbled about that person in your office who's been on board for 2 weeks and just isn't doing what they said they were going to do? Happens all the time. So what I do in my work now is on multiple fronts. I work with individuals to help them find work. I help with organizations to help them improve their operations from a hiring perspective and their management and leadership. And again, back to that theme of for businesses like yours, I may be working with that self-employed person who is a little nuts, shall we say, and have them have a sounding board to sort things out with. So it's not just simply you who's trying to figure things out. As good as you are at what you do, this is a blind spot that many owners have.
Yeah, the forte that I had when I was in practice, Jeff, and we talked a bit just, Jeff actually has already done another show with me. We're going to air that show after this one, a couple shows down the road, but it was based on quite a few emails that I got from people who, because of the fact the economy is doing so well for virtually everyone, some people who had been in employment and then tried the entrepreneurial gig maybe weren't making quite as much money. Maybe they're having success, but weren't making quite as much money, or maybe it was just too much stress for them to handle, or they just realized that they wanted the security of having a job. Well, I went ahead and did a show. I did a show with Jeff on that topic, and I did a show with another gal on that topic sometime back, and it got really good response. So I wanted to, I reached out to Jeff, and that was the original contact that we had. But Jeff, I remember I was great at marketing. I mean, I had that nailed down, but one thing that I had a problem with was turnover with employees in my office. And I realized, hey, every time I get a particular practice, and I had 6 locations, every time I get one of these locations, like the new ones, up and running and really get some momentum, and then I lose a key employee, any employee for that matter, it would literally slam the brakes on the growth of the business and create all kinds of internal turmoil and stress and everything else, and take us off the focus of growth and serving our patients and growing at the same time to, hey, we're scrambling to find someone who can actually do the job right, somebody who's not causing problems in the office, someone who's qualified, someone who doesn't have to, leave right exactly at, 5:30 because, they got to go pick up their kids or whatever. We have to have some flexibility. And so all those things I learned over time. But let's do this. One more question before we kind of dive into these, because I have a lot of questions and I know you got a lot of great content for us. Was there an individual, and again, this is a question that I ask every guest, the first 2 questions, was there an individual or a circumstance, a situation that kind of took you from where you were in the corporate world as a recruiter, if I'm saying that right, to the point of now helping so many people not only find jobs, but more importantly, and related to today's topic, helping business owner save tons of time, money, and effort by teaching them the steps to hire the most qualified people for their business?
I think it's not one person. Although in the other interview, I may have pointed to it. But when you reflect a little bit, suddenly you discover how crazy the process is.
It is.
It's like a bad blind date. And in a blind date, what happens?
And he doesn't mean a person who's blind. He means a person, because some people might not remember what a blind date is. We have dating on the internet now.
It's someone who you didn't swipe to meet.
Yeah, okay.
And who you're introduced to, and you're told, I'm going to meet you at such and such restaurant or such and such bar or coffee shop, and I'll be the one wearing the fill in the blank. And I'll be seated over here, and just come over to me and we'll sit down and talk. So in this kind of a date, let's say there's a setup to this. And the result winds up being the setup person says, I'll introduce the 2 of you. Great. And now you have to sit down and talk to someone. And the setup person has texted to say, I'm running late. Why don't the 2 of you get acquainted? It's really a contrived format. Now, here's the biggest problem with interviewing, as I see it. And that is, most of you think you can assess for fit. This person can fit into my office like a glove. Oh, they're great. And you can't. And this was the realization I had when I was doing search work. And that is, it didn't take me long to figure out that job hunters are on good behavior when they interview with a company. I think we all know that. But it took me a while to figure out that my clients were also on good behavior. My institutional clients were on good behavior. And one day it hit me like a ton of bricks when I realized that no one had ever said to me, Jeff, I've got a lot of problems around here. And, I've lost 3 people in the last 6 months, all in this same job. And I'm up to my eyeballs at this point. And I need to hire someone to save my derriere. No one ever says that. Instead, they've got this great smile button face on. They're happy. They talk about a great team of people. We're kind of like family around here, like family in the Christmas movies.
Yeah, like Archie Bunker. Yeah, Archie, whatever. That's all in the family. Yeah.
Well, I think in terms of the holiday movies where they're throwing things at one another and they're arguing like, politicians during a debate do. And I'll just simply say that once I realized that, I understood how broken the interview process was, that everyone is on a script, and how important it is for you as an employer to get off that traditional script of interviewing. Hey, tell me about yourself and what you've been doing professionally, and get to the real person. Get to the human being, because that's usually where it's breaking down more than anything. You have an expectation that this person can do the job, and you're probably pretty good at evaluating for that. But it's breaking down in two basic ways. You think you can mind read a person who's, shall we say, trying to convince you, convince, the first three letters are con you into hiring them. And you're trying to do the same thing with them. No disrespect is intended, but that's where it breaks down, that fundamental belief that each of you can read the other and know what it's going to be like working together. So it's about getting off the script, because otherwise hiring is little better than a coin toss. Like if you figure out that math I gave earlier about how the statistics show that hiring is broken, and at best it's 40%, it could be 60%. Flip a coin. That's 50%. That's better than some of you are doing now. Yep. So you might as well see the person, walk in, flip the coin, I'll hire them. But we don't want to do that. We want to get better at this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the stats that I read, Jeff, in preparation for this show is that it had a range, and this was from the U.S. Department of Labor and Statistics, the government, which obviously means it must be true. But they said that employers lose on average a minimum of 30% of the annual salary. So let's say you're going to pay somebody $50,000 to work for you. You're going to lose a minimum of $15,000 for that person, even if they don't work a year, if they're a bad hire and you have to replace them, all the way up to, in some businesses, $240,000 I saw was a high-end average of how much you lose hiring the wrong person. And so it's not just the money you pay them. It's not just the money that you have to repay or, pay again, invest again into the retraining or of a new hire. It's all the lost opportunity. And that was the thing for me, the lost opportunity. And so if you could speak to that end, let's kind of dive into this. And as you're the, obviously you're the expert in this field. Where do you want to start the interview? And then I'm going to ask my questions as we go through it.
And what you're speaking to is employee retention with that number. And that's really an issue of engagement. How do you engage people in your workplace? And the statistics come out on that one is the United States has the best employee engagement statistics in the world. We're up to 35% of employees are engaged, which means the other 65% are at best ambivalent, but at worst, they're doing things that actively undermine what you're trying to do.
Yeah, let me give you just a quick story, and then I'm going to let you run with that. Sure. There were a couple of different examples where I was working in a dental office, and yes, I work with a lot of dentists, I work with a lot of chiropractors, I work with some medical doctors, and then I work with a lot of consultants, but I remember one case in particular where the office manager looked at me and she said, wait a minute, if we're going to be getting busier, I'm going to get paid more money. And they were already, this very highly qualified dentist in the office, had a couple of associates, really nice location. The staff, other than the negative Nancy staff office manager, all seemed to be on board with things, but the office manager, I felt like she was going to put the kibosh, and in fact, she did. She put the brakes on. She threw the wrench into the system. So as they started to get busier, she became irritated because she felt like she was owed more money. And then I know that there was another instance, I'll just say very quickly, where one of the people that work at the desk, this was not an assistant or hygienist, but one of the admin people in the office, and I think this was in a chiropractor's office, But she was irritated when I actually said to her, "Hey, listen, there's work to be done. We're doing these things." And she was mad because I made her put her smartphone down because she was on social media. She was on Facebook because I think at the time Instagram wasn't even in existence. But she was mad because she was, going back and forth on Facebook Messenger or doing something on Facebook, and she thought that was how rude of me to expect her while she's on the clock being paid. This wasn't her lunch break. This wasn't a break. This was during work time. And my whole thing is, you hire the wrong people. They're stealing money from you if they're not, like Jeff said, engaged. If they're not working while you're paying them by their choice, that's stealing money from you. That's stealing money off the table. It's stealing money from your family. It's stealing food off the table from your kids. And so I just wanted to throw those two because those really have always stuck in my mind. And I use those as examples of just how bad this can be when you hire the wrong person, and getting the right person the first time through is so critically important to the success and profitability of your business.
I couldn't agree more. Fundamentally, you want to hire people who care. They'll never care as much as you do, nor should they. They're an employee. You have the responsibility for the bottom line. It's your family that's risking everything. Got it. But you can expect them to care about doing the job and not sit there as though they're zombies at a desk.
Doesn't that go to their character as a person?
Yes, but in an interview, they obviously got by you. And that's the issue. You ask certain questions that are designed to identify skills. Often, and I'm not speaking about you, Ken, but often what happens is expectations aren't laid out for people before they're hired.
So let's walk through the process. And you walk us through the process of how this should go in a condensed version. Obviously, this would take, to do this right, you would need more than 30 minutes on a podcast to do, but at least you can give us a reference point, give information so people know that you're the right person to hire to help them with this or not. And let's walk through this. So go ahead and run with it.
So I want to start off with the idea that you have work to do before you start interviewing people. And the first thing is to identify what it is this person needs to know, what skills they need to possess in order to be qualified, right? That's a pretty obvious thing, but the next question becomes, how do you evaluate for that? Now, sometimes in offices, and I don't presume to know every office that is going to be represented as listeners today, it's the owner who's doing it. So they can develop the measuring sticks for how to evaluate for those skills. But often it's an office manager who's evaluating an admin, and they flip from question to question based upon whim. And thus, bias has a way of creeping into the process because based upon one answer, they come up with another question. There's no standards to it. So you want to come up with the foundational questions for evaluating for the knowledge you need someone to have. That should be pretty obvious. But, folks, be honest with yourselves. How often do you wing it? Right? Yeah. Hey, we want you to talk to an admin at 2:30. Can you do that? Sure.
I think that's probably one of the reasons, Jeff, your question is a rhetorical question. The fact that so many new hires fail, I think, answers your question. Are people being organized and disciplined about this and writing down the qualifications they want people to have prior and working through a systematic process through the interview process?
Agreed. And with that, I always think of the classic job description. I work with a lot of big companies on their hiring process and job hunters interviewing there as well. And I tell job hunters that most job descriptions are about 80% accurate because no one takes the time to write them. And if they do, they never take the time to update them over the course of time. So folks, if you happen to have a job description, fabulous. You're ahead of the game. But before you start working off that job description, take a moment and think, how's the job really evolved over the last 2 years? For example, if you have an administrative person and you're thinking of them doing business development work to bring people into the practice as well, why don't you lay out some of the criteria in the job description so someone isn't blindsided with that during the interview? I'll use another example. 3 years ago, you might not have had a social media component to your selling. It's part of the marketing that everyone does these days. That job description may not talk about the fact that you want them on Instagram or on IGTV, Instagram TV, by the way, or on any of the other social media platforms, putting stuff out, promoting, boosting at times on Facebook, a whole host of things in order to sell business. You got to update this because surprises are never good for the employee. And worse than that, it's taking away from revenue producing stuff to interview someone who you're never going to hire because they don't know how to do this stuff. Make it easy for people to know what the expectations of the job is, right? Why wouldn't you do that? And then when you're evaluating people afterwards, some things are going to be more important than others to you. So, for example, you may want that front office person to have a certain presence and bearing to them, right? But that's going to be less important than that they can handle a schedule for someone or know someone's scheduling program or nuances to the job that become more important than that quote-unquote presence at the front desk. So I always remind people, get a weighted scale in there in your mind for which of these things is more important to you than others, because the perfect individual has yet to walk in the door of your offices. Why would you expect it to happen now, right?
So, Jeff, let me just throw a question and then bring something to my mind. So let's say that you mentioned like a software program or something. And so is there a certain strategy to approaching someone? Let's say you've got a certain type of software this person's never been exposed to. Are there any type of questions or qualifying questions or test that you could give to see if this person has the mental capacity to pick something like that up and learn it and then run with it? Is that part of the strategy here?
Well, one of the things you might say to them is, if you notice on a resume that they don't have the software, you can say, take a look at the YouTube videos about it before they walk in the door. Let's see if they've actually gone to YouTube to take a look at it, what they know. I know my son is now working in a dental office. Now, he's 19, and it's his first, I can't say first real job, but it's his first job as an employee in a dental office. So no experience there, and he's being hired. He's going to have to learn a piece of dental software. He's a digital native. It should be easy for him to pick up. What does he do? He goes to YouTube. He watches the videos, walks in, and the dentist basically tells him, we're going to have you trained on the software. And he goes, I've already watched some of the videos on YouTube about it. It doesn't make me an expert, but I have some ideas of the concepts about it, what it's similar to what I've done before. And doesn't that person show a degree of hunger and ambition to you?
Absolutely.
Just because they went on to YouTube. How tough was that? Especially since you told them that, why don't you take a look at the software on YouTube and see what you can pick up about it beforehand. If they don't do it, don't care, right?
Absolutely.
They're expecting to learn everything on your dime. And I always remind people that, when you hire, it's an expensive proposition to bring someone on board. And you want to make decisions about them pretty quickly as to whether or not you should invest more time with them. Because the person who in the first 2 weeks isn't the same person who sat opposite you during the interview, and everyone knows what I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
Now, they've all had that experience where this bright, smart person starts working and suddenly they become an imbecile. How did this happen? And you got to fire faster, because that person who was on good behavior on the interview and walks in the door and starts working for you and suddenly isn't that same person, they're not going to get any better. This is them at their best. When they're trying to put on a good impression, you got to get rid of them faster. And you might just talk with them first about what your expectations were, again, just as a reminder, if it's bothering you, what they're doing. No reason for this to fester. Just remind them about some of your expectations.
What about deploying, like in your hiring process, when you talk to a new hire or potential new hires? Hey, listen, we're going to hire you on a trial basis. Make sure you're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for you. And then at the end of 30, 60, 90, whatever it is, or maybe multiple points along the way, to me, that's one of the things I did, because I did have a couple instances where I had to let people go. And I'm not afraid to fire someone. I just personally don't like it because I know what that means to that person. I never had a problem emotionally, psychologically firing someone who was just a derelict or I felt who was dishonest. I got no room for that or no tolerance for that at all. But if someone who was really trying, they just couldn't do the job, man, my heart went out to those people and I did whatever I could to try to keep them and try to make it work, even to my own hurt sometimes. And that's one of the reasons, like I told you before, I've told you many times, I hate babysitting adults. And that's why I outsource virtually everything I do now, because I want to hand it off to somebody and know it's going to get done. But everybody can't do that. If you own a private practice, a small business, your business probably demands that you have staff people. And as a result, you can't just outsource like I'm doing. And so these are really important questions, really important processes. So Jeff.
Let me deal with that situation that you just described.
Yeah.
Because it really lays out my case. So number one is if I'm an employee of another firm and someone says I'm going to hire you on a 30-day trial, I'm never quitting my job. Because you don't trust me enough to hire me and make a commitment to me. So I'm never going to quit my job for a trial. So you've already eliminated a certain population of people because they don't want to take the risk, and understandably. Because, hey, look, they don't know what they're walking into. Remember, you were on good behavior with them. You could be an absolute maniac.
Well, it wasn't. Let me rephrase just real quick. And you bring up a really good point. I wasn't implying to them, hey, I'm going to check you out for 30 days. And if you make it, you make it. If you don't, you don't. I meant like at the end of 30 days, we're going to evaluate your progress. And obviously, if they're just a miserable failure and there's no recovering them, you got to get rid of them quickly, like you said. But that way we can kind of reset and help them get focused on, hey, listen, this is what I'm really looking for. You're great in these points, but I'd like to see you strengthen up or work on these points. That's what I meant by the evaluation process, not saying this is a probationary, and if I use that vernacular or those words, I misspoke. That sounds like a politician. I've been watching the news too much here lately, but anyway, that's what I meant. But I know some people do say, hey, listen, we're going to hire you on a trial basis for 30 days. So go ahead and continue with that vein.
And my thought is, it suggests to you uncertainty about the hire. And thus, to me, what it encourages, I would encourage someone to do is find a better way to decide. And thus, if you're not sure, this is not the person you should choose. So to me, the fact that you're going to do a 30-day trial, not a probation, but you're going to check things out with one another, no harm, no foul. If you decide, each of you decides, to part your company at the end of 30 days, that's fair, but understand the message that you're admitting to the person about not really being sure about them. And that thus it suggests a better way of interviewing. And to me, I go back to that first thing I said about getting off the script. So most people start off the conversation with, tell me about yourself and what you've been doing professionally, or walk me through your background.
How should we start? How should we start?
Now, there's a couple of different ways to do it. And I've got like 5 questions I'd like to think of.
Sure. Yeah. Let's go through.
One is, how did you wind up being here today? Like if you walk me through your life progression, what brought you to the point where you're in my office today? Now, I learned this question on a podcast. I don't remember whose it was, but it was a wonderful question because I'll give you an example from the show. We have the first African-American systems administration leader at Twitter. And if you know about software, it's unusual for an African-American to rise to this level and as prominent in an organization as a Twitter. And thus, if you just said, tell me about yourself and what you've been doing, well, you would miss the part of his background where he lived in an area of Los Angeles where he had to ride the bus to school for 2 hours each way through gang territory. And at times, everyone on the bus would bend over to ensure that they were less at risk of being shot. And that he went to his school and someone spotted him as having an aptitude for technology work. You'd miss all the texture of the man's background and never hear it. So to me, asking a question about their history brings a degree of humanity into the conversation that normally doesn't exist. It also helps each of you connect with one another as human beings, because to me, you know how to evaluate for the skills. You don't need help with that, right? What you're trying to do is find someone who, excuse my language, gives a damn. And that there's something about them where there's a spark of life to them still. Because I don't want you hiring people who are dead from the neck up. Those people you're going to have to invest so much time and effort into. You're going to do more work than you want to managing them.
Which takes away from your ability to run and grow your business and focus on the things. The highest and best use of your time is no longer the highest and best use of your time. It's now focused on trying to repair a broken employee that you should have never hired in the first place.
And thus, it takes you away from the good employees because the bad ones get all the attention. You're spending so much time trying to fix them. You don't give any attention to the positive ones, and they resent it, and they resent you, and they feel unappreciated, and then they start to wander. It's like the spouse who doesn't get attention from their wife or husband. They suddenly start to think about someplace else where they can get appreciated. And there's always a recruiter out there trying to find them. And there's always some online posting where someone's willing to pay them more than you. So the idea is, how do you connect with people as people? And it starts off with understanding their background. Now, from there, I go to a second question that really is a big time saver. What's most important to you in the next job or organization? What will you need to see or hear to believe we're a good choice for you? Because if they say something to you that you can't provide, why not just end the interview there? Right? Why are you going to try and persuade them that, hey, we know we're not going to give you insurance, but we've got this great job doing the exact same work for us that you're doing for someone else now.
Where you have great insurance.
Where you have great insurance. Why put yourself and them through this torture? Because that is what you're doing. You're wasting your time. You're wasting your breath and your energy. Just bring it to an end. So these two questions together, maybe it's 10 minutes in total.
So what's, just real quick, I don't want to interrupt your flow, but just I want to throw this question in because it's eating away at me. How do you end an interview when you just know that it's not right? This person is not a good fit. Not that they're, a dirtbag or a loser, but it's just not right. How do you just like slam your stuff on the table and say, okay, we're done. You suck. You're not qualified. I'm just kidding. But you know what I'm saying? What's the best way to do that?
Well, in the example of, with the question I just gave, it's as simple as, we don't do that here. We do it differently. And I respect your wishes, but we're not the right place for you. And I don't want to try and persuade you to the contrary. So I'm sorry this was a waste of your time. In other words, you fall on your sword, you take the blame on yourself, and let them go. I don't want to waste your time anymore, knowing that we're not going to give you what you really want. And you bring it to a polite end. Because at least in this way, no one's going to sit there going, because these days, of course, if you do something weird, and weird is in air quotes, by the way, social media is out there, and it can affect your practice.
Yeah, or your business. Yeah, absolutely.
Right. So you don't want to be in a situation where you're being abrupt with people, you're being rude. You want to be human.
Okay, let me ask you another question. And I promise this is my last, but this just popped up in my head because I know people are going to want to yell at me if I don't ask it. Is it legal to video the interview process? And the reason I ask that is because you brought up the good point. I haven't seen it in this context where people can defame your character based on an interview where they didn't get the job. But I have seen employees who got fired turn around and go back and try to defame and, hurt the name and the reputation of their employer when they were justifiably let go for theft or dishonesty or just not doing a good, not being engaged like you talked about. Can you video? I mean, I know you're not a lawyer, so we're not making a legal recommendation here, but just from your your experience, is that something that would be smart? Because I would think I would want to do that now at this point, given what you just said, if I was going to hire someone.
So I'll start off with the hardest 3 questions for any guest to say on any TV show, interview, or podcast. I don't know.
Okay.
Really do consult an attorney before you consider doing that.
Okay.
Because you don't want to just arbitrarily have security in there unless your people know about this in advance.
Yeah, and it's state by state difference. Okay, so I just wanted to throw that. Go ahead and run with what you're doing. I apologize for that.
No, please. So next question to ask is, why do you do what you do? How did you get into doing this kind of work? Now, what you're looking for is some spark of life from them, something where it doesn't sound like they're doing this for the money. It's nothing wrong about them doing for the money.
Yeah, we're in business to make a profit on purpose. Absolutely.
Exactly right. But there's something about them that there's an excitement that shows up. There could be a twinkle in the eye, a smile on their face, a laugh. It's something human about them that's revealed to you in the answer, or not. The or not doesn't necessarily mean that they're disqualified, but it's another indicator about the person and their character. Now, recognize some personality types are relatively flat. Introverts can be that way. And thus, do you want an introvert at the front desk? Do you want an introvert doing business development work if that's part of the job? That's your decision to make. But don't be surprised if that introvert who's at the front desk has trouble looking the patient in the eye when they walk into your office.
Yeah, that's not good. That's definitely not good.
I don't know that that's the case for everyone, but it's another data point for you.
Guys, just to prove Jeff's authenticity, let's go back to the very initial stage of the interview. And if you listen to, and you can even watch this on video when I throw it up on YouTube. But one of the first questions I ask everybody, how'd you get started doing what you're doing? Essentially, give me your backstory, and with great enthusiasm, and you can hear it in his voice. And you can see it in the video, like his eyes light up, his pupils dilate. He's got a big grin on his face. He becomes much more animated because he's incredibly passionate about what he does. And so he's living what he's practicing what he preaches. So Jeff, go ahead. I just wanted to throw that because some people aren't going to see the video, but they can hear it in your voice, the excitement and the fact that this is an authentic guy.
Bingo. And that's what you're looking for, is congruence between the package and the voice. And the body doesn't lie. When you see energy out of a person as they talk about something, that's a signal for you that you've hit on something that has meaning for them. And thus, I'll use the example of my son. He really wants to do a good job. It comes through with a meticulous care for what he does. And as he talks about things, he's determined. He's a bulldog. It'll show up in the course of the interview. And if that's what you're looking for, no, I'm not trying to get my son a job.
He's like his mother, right? Not anything like his dad, not super confident or gregarious or outgoing. He must be like his mother.
He's like himself, a hybrid between the two of us, which is interesting. And then again, for getting them off the script, what did you want to be when you were growing up? It's a fun question because, again, they're not going to fake it with you. Like, they're going to wonder, why is she asking me this? Because it's really about connecting with the person.
Right. That's a good question.
So, what did you want to be when you grow up? It'll teach you about the dreams that they had and a chance to talk about their passion. So, in the follow-up question to that, I encourage, and again, there's lots of data questions you'll be able to ask people about their skills and about their knowledge. I don't want to cover or attempt to cover today. I'm just dealing with a couple of basic human questions. So the follow-up question to that is, and by the way, I want to be a pitcher with the Yankees. Okay? So, and I could go through how I would go to the doctor's office at times because I needed a checkup, and he would ask me how I would throw a curveball, and I would show him how to do this. And then it becomes, so how did you get from there to here? What's your path that brought you to this? No judgment in the answer. I want to be clear about this. You're not judging them for the answer. Sometimes there are economic things in their life that made them make certain life decisions. Using myself as an example, there was a point where I wanted to be a psychotherapist. I went to graduate school. I met my wife there. I put my career aspirations to change on hold and waited 15, 17 years before returning to them.
She put the whammy on him, guys. She used some of that psychotherapy stuff on him and stole him away, and that's how they got married, and now he's back on track. Happily married. So wait. Let me just real quick. This comes to mind. So your wife and you went to psychotherapy school, to graduate school together. So I could just imagine if you guys were having, and I'm just having a little lighthearted fun here, just imagining a disagreement in your house. You guys throw in different like subliminal mind-bending techniques, mind control techniques on one another. No, you're right. I just can't even imagine how that would go.
And it works really well. And back to the question, how did you get from there to here allows you to get some insight as to who they really are. Because if you let them stay on the script because you ask the same scripted questions that everyone else does, I can assure you they can watch one of my videos on YouTube and answer all your BS questions perfectly. But they can't fake who they are with these questions. And you're trying to get to the character of the person, not just simply, have you done this? Have you done that? Have you done this? Have you done that? What do you think about?
Can I just make an observation that I think goes to your point, and then I want you to follow up and run with it? Number one, because the economy is so good, and because there aren't a whole lot of people like you. I mean, you're in a very small group of individuals that, I mean, you're known throughout the world, Jeff. You're one of the world's leading experts on helping people from the employee side. So number one, following the interview process and doing this, I mean, here's the other point I want to throw in. Most of the people I think who probably apply for your openings are going to be qualified or have the ability to learn the technical aspect of the job. And so going at the heart of the psychology, the emotional aspect, the character of the individual, I think is probably the most important thing you could do. And so number one, you want to do this, if I understand you, Jeff, correctly, from number one, the point that, hey, listen, jobs are available all over the place to the most highly qualified people. So if you really want the best employees, you better get your interview process lined out like Jeff's showing you. Number two, you want to get it lined out like Jeff is showing you because you want to make sure you get the right hire the first time so you can run and your business can grow and not have to deal with losing all the time, effort, and money and going back through the rehiring process again and again and again. Am I following you here?
Right. And so the hiring process is what we've been dealing with. But then there's the employee retention part of this as well, because you can talk about this great office with everyone has everyone's back and it not being true. So how do you keep people engaged? And part of it is your relationship with them, because you're the axis upon which the office runs. And thus, I come back to that theme I mentioned earlier, a lunatic for a boss. If you are a crazy maker, you drive people away. And folks, you will have your crazy moments, but I'm talking about crazy makers, because there are those folks out there who just make people nuts. They say one thing means something else, and they wonder why you can't mind read. And it happens all the time. So recognize your people need some positive reinforcement, just simply criticism. And I always encourage people. I did this with my son as he sat down with the person he's working for now. It's the 2-question review. What am I doing well? Because that's always the hardest question for people to answer. Because we all know how to criticize someone. They don't do this, they don't do that. Those come to the top of our mind. But it's the, what are you doing well? To start off any review, people got to hear the good stuff. They can't just hear criticism from you, because eventually they feel like they're being turned into plow horses. beaten into submission. And that personality that made you want to hire them eventually evaporates because you've turned them into machines. No one wants to feel like a machine. And that's what we do in offices these days. And that's how disengagement occurs more than anything. We talk about creating systems in offices and they help with efficiency, but where they affect the humanity of the person who's going to be, for example, at the front desk or managing the office in general. And that person's trying to turn everyone into machines so that it's easier for them, but not necessarily easier for the people who you have out there serving your patients. Suddenly you got a problem. There has to be a blend between the two. And for you who own practices, you've got to figure out where that line is. And if the office manager struggles with it, just love them up. You're doing great in this. We don't want to turn them over. We want to love them up first. And if you're not familiar with the phrase, you want to be fawning all over them. You want to be catching them doing things right first. And always talking about the things that they're doing well and then say, but this one little thing over here, if you could just switch on the gears on this one. No, you can't do that? How come? Teach me. What's the problem with that? Oh, could you come up with another workaround to it? Because what we're having problems with is all the hygienists are pissed off. And we can't risk losing them. I know it's a little harder for you, but what other solution can you come up with? Negotiate is part of your job. And respect the people you have working for you so that they feel that they matter. Because there's nothing like the day you get married to someone. For those of you who are married, you remember that wonderful day you got married. Everything is wonderful. And then we start taking the other person for granted. And that's what happens with hiring. We start taking people for granted and thinking that if we tell them to do something, we're immediately right and they're immediately wrong. Sometimes we have to admit we make mistakes and own up to it. Like I did earlier when I said, I don't know. Those are the 3 hardest words for a guest to say who's being presented as an expert. Well, folks, you know how to do your practice extremely well. You may be great with someone in the chair, and you may not be as good at managing or leading, which is different than managing, by the way. But you may not be as good at that and think by proclamation, hear ye, from this day forward, we shall do it this way. You may think that's the way to run your business. Into the ground is the way it will happen because you're not going to engage people with your thought process. You're just going to tell people what you want to do. And if you do that all the time, they're going to wait for you to do it all the time.
Jeff, you're 100% right. I haven't seen it often, but I have instances where the entire staff, and again, we have 40% of the audience are people who own dental practices that listen to this show, but we also have people who are small business owners and chiropractors and consultants. But I have had a couple of instances that really do come to mind where the whole staff, every office I go into, there's usually one person who it's like, this person, the boss isn't treating me fairly or this or that, unreasonable expectations, never appreciates my work. But there have been a couple times where the whole entire staff was in unison about, like you just said, hear ye, this is the way, this is the law, this is my sandbox and you're going to do it my way or it's the highway kind of attitude. And the business owner was really screwing up his or her profitability by being more militant and not being empathetic and engaging and working with the team. And so I do think this is a really good point that you bring up. You can't be like that with your team. You've got to actually care about your team and work together for a common goal and be able to lead people and bring them along. I think that's a great point.
And with that, you can say it as simply as, I'm thinking of doing this. I know it's going to cause you some hardship, but this is why. Can you come up with a better solution? I'm struggling to find something other than this because this is a problem I'm having.
That's good.
I've got a guy that I coach who's a sales manager with a medical device firm in South Carolina. And, in their office, time and again, he's put in the position of having to make decisions about his team. And it's Often because it's a sales organization, it's about their commission structure. I'm trying to incent you in one particular way. I know it's going to have an adverse impact on your sales of this particular product, but this is now a commodity. Our margins are much lower. I can't pay you what I once did. I want you selling more of this. So I'm prepared to pay you more for this, and I got to pay you less for this because I'm not seeing the result I need. Can you come up with a different way?
That's good.
Yeah, it engages them in the process, and they can't get as pissed off at you, as angry at you, because you've explained the problem to them and why you need to do it this way. And in his case, our margins have gotten squeezed. So we've got to sell bigger margin stuff. It's a longer sales cycle. We understand that, and we'll pay a premium for it. But can you come up with a different solution for me? Becomes a great way in your practice to look at some of those tough decisions you have to make in order to ensure that you don't get the revolution starting in your office where people start grumbling to one another. It affects employee morale and thus patient interaction or client interaction with your firm because they can just pick up the vibe in the office isn't what it once was.
Yeah, and I'll say this, that the most successful clients that I have aren't like that. There are clients that I've had in the past that are kind of, they want to micromanage every single action every single person takes. And they may attain a certain level of success, and then they hit a ceiling, and they never, ever, ever get through that. You want to hire people who can do jobs better than you can, do the different tasks in the office better than you can, who you can trust, and just let them go. And obviously, I again learned this from me and old Dan years ago. What you don't inspect, people will not respect. So you have to inspect and measure and monitor their work, but not with a magnifying glass. You've got to trust them enough, hire the right people, train them, equip them, prepare them, and then challenge them and let them go do the work for you and let them succeed, help them succeed. This is a great point.
If you're in the weeds and you're in the minutia, it's hard to get the bigger picture perspective that comes from being an eagle soaring in the clouds. The eagle can see everything because they're just looking at things from a higher level perspective. If you're in the weeds, it's like being an ant. And you didn't go into starting your business to be an ant. Yes, you watch your pennies because pennies become nickels, nickels become quarters, and then dollars, on and on and on. But you can't be there on everything. You want to have people around you who can do that for you and tell you about what they're doing so that in this way, you can have the perspective that you need to have to grow your business and to lead your business and not just simply manage your business.
Jeff, you got time for 2 questions? What about the interview process as far as, is there a recommended number of times you should interview someone? So as an example, one of the things I used to do is I used to do an initial group interview. So I would tell everybody, this is the time you need to be here for your interview. I would have anywhere from 5 to 10 to 15, even 20 people showing up. They had no idea it was a group interview. And what I would have them do is stand up in the front of my office for 3 minutes and say, and tell everybody in the group. And some people, like once they realized what I was doing, they would leave. That's fine. But I would have them stand at the front of the office and tell every one of the other candidates, and this was job interview number 1, why you're the most qualified person to be there for the job and why you were better than everybody else there. And I did that because I wanted to see if they could handle pressure. And I wanted to see how they were speaking under, handling and speaking in public and things like that, because I did a lot of seminars to get new patients, a lot of health classes and things like that. But I did multiple interviews and I funneled them through. In the last part of the interview process, and I don't even know if this is legal to do anymore, I would have my top 2 or 3 candidates. I would say, listen, I'm going to have you come work a day. I'm not going to pay you for the day. You can decide if you like the job, if not, and we're going to get a feel for each other, see what goes on in the trenches, and then I'll make my decision. I'm either going to hire 1, 2 of you, or none of you. I'll hire 1 or 2 of you, and maybe none. So how many people in the process? Are there a set number of steps? Is there a process to that? And obviously we can't get into it for lack of time, which again is another reason to go to thebiggamehunter.com US. And check out Jeff's video. Jeff, you got like thousands of videos. It's insane. But, and that's not just for employers, that's for employees as well. I mean, you put me to shame. But having said that, is there like an average number of, you don't want to hire after the first interview, I'm sure. Unless
this person is terrific. I check their references if I'm doing it on the basis of one interview, because people can always con you on one. So you want to see what others say about them. And if it's their first employer, you have no one to check. So you minimally have to bring them back a second time. My favorite thing with people who are going to be in public roles or selling something, I want to put them on the spot. I wouldn't necessarily do group interviews, but there's nothing wrong with a group interview. What I've done with different organizations is in their interview process, the hiring manager will say, sell your product to me. Give me a 5-minute presentation on the product.
Yeah.
So it's something that they already know. And if they fumble around with that, this is ostensibly what they're currently selling. What's the message in that? Not good. It's as simple as that. Not good. So there's no rule.
Okay.
But if the person is good, recognize someone else is going to see that they're good too. And then you're in a competitive situation and you want to always cut that off where you can.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I don't know for sure because, again, I'm not in the business of hiring people and I'm not in the business of, being an employee, but this is an employee market from what I understand because there's a lot of openings for jobs that aren't being filled. So my second question, and this is going to be, I want to be true to the people that we did the first interview with. And it's this. What are your thoughts when you talk to an employer and you're going to help them you're coaching them along to make their interview process better so they can hire the right person? What would your suggestion or your advice be to them if someone who had been a solopreneur or doing their own business or whatever, for whatever reason, wanted to leave the self-employment world, the do-it-myself world, and go back into being an employee? What would you recommend to your client about hiring someone who's coming from being their own boss to wanting to go back into the workforce? What would you counsel your person to say or handle that?
The question I would counsel them to ask is, and you have to do it with a degree of theater to it, why do you want to do that? So you can get to the truth. And the truth is, I wasn't doing the kind of numbers I thought I would. So I've decided I can't. I don't want to do this anymore. I've got a wife, husband, or partner who's laying up in bed at night and is worried about, can we afford the apartment? Can we afford our house? Are our kids going to fill in the blank? This is an honest answer, right? You want to hear that kind of honesty from someone. And if they can do it directly with you without defensiveness, with the sound of sincerity in their voice, you've got a human being there who'll be great with patience. And that's what I think in terms of what's the message in terms of emotional intelligence that this person can convey in their answer so that you can trust them and not have to worry that they're just going to ride this out for 6 months before doing it all over again.
Sorry, Jeff, when Jeff and I did our first interview like a week ago, I was starting to get a cold and I was hacking and coughing. And so I have the little mute button on my mic, but I just pushed the mute button. I'm at the tail end of my cold now. But anyway, yeah, that's one of the things that I've heard in the past people say to me is, when people who had emailed me about wanting to know how to re-enter the workforce. And one of their common objections they heard from, or concerns, I think is better, from potential employers when they went for the interview is, hey, listen, you've been an entrepreneur for 2 years or 5 years. What's to keep you 6 months down the road from deciding, hey, listen, I want to go back into that and you leave us high and dry? That's a common question that they were to get. So I think you bring up a good point.
And I have one extra piece to it.
Yeah.
Because of the language you used. I've been a bad entrepreneur for the last 2 years. And I'm frankly not doing all that well. So like I have a friend who's a chiropractor locally, had his own practice and decided, he's 70 now and he's still working on people. Maybe he's better off working through someone else's office. And that's what he's done. And he's thrilled. It's so much easier. And folks, what it's like when you own a business, it owns you too.
Well, the mistake a lot of people make, Jeff, is that when they go into business for themselves, what they're trying to do is create a job for themselves. But see, when you own your business, as everybody knows, you're not just doing the job of, let's say you're a salesman or, sales professional, to be more politically correct. You're no longer just a sales professional. Now you're a professional accountant. You're a manager. You're whatever. You're the cleaning person. You're all those things. You're in charge of, buying supplies and customer relationship management and all those things that go into owning a business. And so some people don't realize that, and they just can't deal with it. So to be fair with that, I think that's a mistake I think a lot of people make. So they might be really good at one particular thing, like they might be great at sales, but they just couldn't handle the accounting part of it, or they just didn't like the fact that, whatever the other issues are, or the responsibilities, not issues, that come along with being a business owner, they just want to deal with it. So anyway, so here's my last question. What's the one question today? And you already knew the gig on this because I pulled it on you last time. Most people are shocked by it, but what's the one question today, Jeff, that I didn't ask, but I should have asked?
Oh, what a great question that is. Oh, let me think. Oh, no one, I think the basic question to ask is, why aren't people better at interviewing? Why aren't they better at hiring? And as I said to job hunters, the skills needed to find a job are different than those needed to do a job. When you went to school for the training to start your practice or start your business, no one talked with you about what it's like to hire employees.
No.
You learned how to do the job. It's like I did coach training at one point. They taught you how to coach. They didn't teach the business of coaching. And it's a completely different skill set. This is a deficiency most owners learn through trial and error. And I must tell you, there's a lot more error and a lot of trials that occur in this process. And where someone like me is helpful is I help shortcut this process so that you don't make as many mistakes, so that you can learn without the mishires that have proved so costly and so agonizing when you have to let someone go. So the question would be, why am I not better at this? No one taught you. And the fun part of follow up to that is, and you weren't bright enough to figure that part out. You thought because you could do the job, you could hire people well. There's already proof that you're struggling with that.
Jeff, in my study of successful people, and that's something I guess that's the one, if, people throw around the term superpower, my superpower, one of the two that I have is being smart enough to know that I don't know things, smart enough to realize that I can get and become much more successful, much, much faster for a lot less money and a lot less time, effort, and struggle by paying someone who's already in the place that I want to be versus learning the hard way like most people want to do, which is just insanity. And so I cannot stress enough. I cannot give you a stronger recommendation, whether you're an employee looking to be able to do a better interview or whether you're an employer, a business owner, and you're looking to hire people, but do it right the first time so you can avoid all the headaches, the lost time, the lost productivity. Give Jeff a look. Jeff, you said you've got a ton of stuff on your website. Tell us your website. Once again, I'll put it in the show notes, but where can people go? I know you got a YouTube channel as well. Tell us about that.
TheBigGameHunter.us is my website. If you go to the blog, I've got thousands of posts there that you can watch, listen to, or read that'll help you with hiring, helps with job search as well, with managing and leading. You can also, if you want to just watch video, my YouTube channel, you can get to at jobsearchtv.com. I have playlists, and the playlist you'd be looking for is No BS Hiring Advice. And that one will just be focused on hiring more effectively. And you may see No BS management advice for managing situations. And you might find a couple of things in career angles through Job Search TV.
Okay. Well, Jeff, I certainly appreciate your time. And I know the members of the Get Clients Now Nation are going to appreciate it as well. And I'm going to be putting this show up in the queue faster than I normally do, just because I've got a couple other people lined up. But I want to put you as the leader on this because I think you're probably the leading authority on this particular topic out of all the expert guests that I have. Well, I don't think I know. Yeah, you're absolutely. And again, thanks for doing this. This was really last minute for you. And so I appreciate you making the time. But I think this is the appropriate interview to have, the show to have, to lead off the new series we're going to be doing. So with that, let's go ahead and call it a wrap.
Fabulous. Thanks for making time to have me on, and hope to hear from some of you and help you in your practice and your business.
All right, so I'm going to cut that part off, and then just real quick, a couple things.
I owe you a bio for me. You'll have that by the weekend. Okay.
And then what about, can you send me links? And then I had a question about the TV thing with going to your URL that goes to the YouTube channel. Did you just buy that URL? Because I have getclientsnow.tv. Somebody wrote a book. CJ Hayden actually wrote it. She has the website, so I'm sure she gets tons of business off my podcast because that's the name of her book. But and her website, her URL. That's why I mentioned the name of my website, kennewhouse.com, at the beginning of every show. But so you just do like a
domain forward, yes,
a redirect from that URL right to the YouTube channel.
Exactly right.
Perfect. Okay. And then something else that I noticed on your website, and maybe I didn't see it, but with testimonials, and this is an area of my expertise, I just want to give it to you because you've been so generous in helping me. Our video testimonial system, the training video itself is almost finished. Once that's done, I'm going to send you the URL. Please don't share it with anyone else because I'm selling this product. But having video testimonials, I think, would just ice the cake for you because you do have testimonials on there, but with the internet now, written testimonials are not believed at all for the most part. Video is where it's at, but you already know that. But this is the system shows you the best, easiest, fastest way to get people to give you feedback, and the language patterns and some of this stuff. A lot of it you'll probably already know, but it's worked really, really well, and I'm really proud of being able to put it together. But I want to give that to you just because you helped out. But those were my two questions. I think your show is going to go live on Friday morning. This one. I'm going to press the people, because I have Dr. Mike Neal with Build My Team. His show is queued up to start Monday. But, in looking at this in retrospect, I got to have you first. I got to have you first because of I just see you as the more prominent expert. I like to lead with the best guy first, or gal, as it were.
Thank you. I appreciate the recognition and acknowledgement.
Yeah.
I know I do great work.
And you're a machine with content, man. You're a machine, so that's awesome. Anyway,
because no one knows how to choose a coach, so they can find out more about me through the content and my sharing the content.
Yeah,
and I'll try and get the bio to you by tomorrow morning.
Or if you got a link, like where you have a bio on a webpage,
probably on my website. If you went there, there's a bio there.
Okay, I'll use that. I'll just have them pull that for me, and then we'll don't worry about sending that. And then, but if you do have a particular unique URL other than the ones you mentioned, send me that, or just actually shoot me an email because otherwise I'll forget it. Shoot me an email of the URL you want people to go to. That's the one I'm going to put in the show notes, or multiple email or URL links. I'll throw those in, but I'm shooting for Friday morning to have this go live.
Super, and I'm sure you'll send me the.
I'm going to make you a video testimonial myself that you can use. And then I'll send you the link once the video testimonial training system is done. I'll send you a link for that so that you can watch that.
One of the nice gifts you gave me was the idea of the recommendation for my podcast. And I've started to ask people for those recommendations too. I hadn't done that up until our conversation last time. And I've gotten a couple of recommendations.
Good for you.
I'm now over 100 for total recommendations. And, it's hard to differentiate yourself as a coach because people don't know how to do it. But testimonials work.
Absolutely. All right, Jeff, I appreciate your time. I'll let you know. I'll get you the stuff ASAP.
Thank you, sir. Be great.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Our objective with this podcast is to help you and your business stand out in the marketplace by crystallizing your messaging, marketing, and communications. On behalf of the whole Ken Newhouse team, thanks for listening.